Hi, my name is Ira Hill, Yisrael Hill. I was a part of the yeshiva for many years, from 1985 through 2016, in various roles as a bacher in Kollel and subsequently working for the yeshiva. Many of you know who I am. For those who don't, you can ask your friends. This week's Parsha is Parsha Vayera. I have a couple of overview questions. I'm going to try to make this a short version because it takes a lot of memory. And the first question I have is, what's the nature of Ishmael's tshuva? We see in next week's Parsha that Yisrael does tshuva according to the Gemara because he let Avram go. Yitzchak goes first at Avram's funeral. Question that always bothered me at this case is, why did the Torah pick this moment to tell us about Yishmael's tshuva? Was that when it happened? Did it happen earlier? Because we see some conflicting possibilities. For example, in this week's Parsha, when Ishmael is left to die, he cries out to Hashem, and Hashem saves him because it says Hashem Husham, where he is, and Rashi brings a medrash that says that he calls him a tzaddik. At this moment, he's a tzaddik, so he sounded like he did tshuva at that moment. Earlier, though, we see that he was very wild. He was attempting to kill Yitzchak. And not only that, at the time of his birth, in last week's parasha, it refers to him as a para Adam, which means some sort of subhuman type of person, maybe. And the way the Rashiva explains it, the word Adam is modifying the word para, meaning wild, so it's almost like an animal dressed up as a human. We also see in this week's parsha that when at the Akedah, that Ishmael is referred to Am Doma L'Chamor, that he is a subhuman category, that he's like the Chamor. He doesn't understand. And even it goes so far is that when the Bris Bein Basarim, Avram says Hashem is destined not to have children, Hashem responds to him that don't look at your mazalos, that Avram may not have children, but Avraham will have children. And the question that's asked on that medrash is, what are you talking about? Avram had children, he had Ishmael. So the Sifsei Secham explains that he's not considered Zera Avraham, as we see that he's not considered part of Avram. So that he's has no connection to him. So the question is who is this person who's supposedly a tzaddik that gets saved, that we see tshuva, and that even in the Gemara they name Tanaim after Yishmael? That's one question. Second question, a general question, which I hope to answer, is that we see by Avelis in general that a person mourns for a parent 12 months, and for every other relative, they only mourn for 30 days. And it seems almost the opposite to be true. The parent seems to be the most natural kind of occurrence, the circle of life. They're the older generation, they're passing on. So why do they have the longest period of avail as opposed to things that are even more tragic? A spouse, a child, chas v'shalom, would be more tragic, and that was only shloshim yom. The next point, the next point is a basic question on the parsha. It says that it says by Sarah, when she goes to ask Avram to send out Ishmael, Hashem says to him, whatever Sarah says to you, you should listen to her voice, her call. It doesn't say her words, it uses the expression call. Why doesn't it say listen to her words? Also, when Hagar puts down Ishmael and she goes away to leave him to die, it says she went away k'mave keshes, to the the distance of a bow shot. Bow shot is an odd measurement. It never is mentioned anywhere else as a measurement of distance. So why over here does the Torah use this measurement? So focus on the question of why Avelus is 12 months for a parent, for mother and father, and for 30 days for siblings or a spouse or chas v'shalom, a child, is one could understand what the nature of Avelus is, right? As we see by Avelus, there's not really a lot of halachas, there's really a lot of minhagim that you always find, because it's really, Avelus is a process, a filtering process in getting yourself back into the world. So when a person, theoretically, all the other relationships are theoretically replaceable. Again, tragic as it may be, a person can have more than one spouse, a person can have more than one sibling, a person can have more than one child, and even though it's tragic, devastating loss, However, that relationship still remains exists, and you can still get nourished and have that in your world, in your life. However, very simply, a person only has one mother and one father. And once that's gone, once that's severed, the whole nature of the world changes. And therefore, there's a new world that they have to develop. And for that, they need a year, 12 months, in order to understand that world, to process that world, in order to have the filter of this availus, in order that they can now see how this world, how they are. In a simple sense, you see, beforehand, they were always the children of so-and-so. Now they become the heads of their own families. The parents are gone, the mother or the father, and therefore now they are now taking on a new role, a new responsibility, a new link in the chain, so to speak. So that's why it's 12 months and opposed to 30 days. With that understanding, we could see what happens during this process is that a person now has to look at the world through the parents' eyes. They're no longer there to help guide them and all that, and now they have to take on and almost step into the shoes, and we use this expression, of where the parent is. And that could be why the Torah focuses on the idea of Avram's funeral as the place to tell us that Ishmael does tshuva. That now that Ishmael is forced to face the world without Avram, he's forced to, so to speak, step up into his world, look at the things, the world the way Avram would look at it, and therefore he does tshuva. He's forced to do tshuva. And why? Because he's now going to take on the messages, the instructions that Avram gave him. What are these instructions? What is his message? We see in the beginning of the parsha, by the incident by Sodom, when Hashem says that he's going to reveal to Avram what's going to happen to Sodom. He says the reason is because I know that Avram is going to instruct his children in Tzedek and Mishpat, that he's going to he knows and that he's going to treat his son, and therefore how can I do this? How can I make the change? The whole world is being blessed through Avram. I can't do that. And there are many Meforshim talking about what is actually going on over here, that Avram is somehow being part of the Hashem's Bezdin. He's now an advocate into the situation, therefore he has a say, he has standing. A lot of things are going on over here, but that's not the point. The key here is that the key I feel for this to help us understand the future is that it says, I know, which Rashi explains is a lashon chibur, is a lashon of love. Simply, the word I know usually means knowledge. Why does Hashem know? He knows what's going to happen. He knows the future. Why is it now a language of? He's saying it's a loving action, meaning what Hashem is saying is that I know that Avram has such a love for me, that we have such a relationship with each other. Of course, he's going to now instruct his children in the proper ways. Meaning, Avram's message is Tzedek and Mishpat, a combination of both. And you see, with Ishmael, even with today, one of the things that the Bnei Ishmael are known for is their Haknasas Orchim, and that's why it was such a taina at the time of the Churban that they showed this fake Haknasas Orchim just to hurt the Jews, and that's why it was such a devastating crime. They were giving them. Here our brothers are in suffering. We're going to give them. When Yosef was being sold, who came by? The Ishmaelim came by and sold and took him, and and down there. They seem to always be on the periphery of helping to move our stories along. However, they're not a part of Klal Yisrael because their message is one of a mixed message, as we see by Sarah. Right? The reason why Hashem says, listen to her call, is because that Abraham and Sarah really were on the same page. We see by Ben Sarah and Mora, one of the expressions they need in order to have a Ben Sarah and Mora is that they have to have the same call, the father and mother's voice. Not only the voice has to sound the same, the message has to be the same, the atmosphere has to be the same. It has to be one educational system, and that's what Abraham and Sarah had. And therefore, when Hashem says, I know Klal Yisrael is going to be created from him, he's only talking about Abraham and Sarah. Even though on a personal level, Yishmael can do tshuva and reach great heights, just like Eliezer on a personal level reached great heights. And because he has a connection to Avram, Hashem made a commitment to Avram that he's going to make a great nation out of him as well. But we see that he got mixed messages. And how do I know that he got mixed messages? Is because we see on the end when Hagar puts him down and she goes away a bow shot. What is a bow shot? Is a distance we never use. However, what does eventually Ishmael become? He becomes an archer. He becomes that meaning, and what they say by archer, what does it mean? He became a robber, he became a harrying man, he became the evil that was brought into Ishmael was brought about seemingly from his mother, and therefore that's the way Hagar looked at the world. If you would have asked Hagar at that moment, how far are you away? She would have said about a bow shot. That was her focus. Those were the things that she brought into it. And the Torah is illustrating the difference is even though he's a tzaddik, even though he's now getting the training, he's getting messaging from Avram, and you see this, however, you're also getting the messages from Hagar. This is what the Pirkei de Rebbe Loza brings out. And the idea is that when Avram came, what was he doing over there, trying to give him a hard time? He came to teach him about Aknasas Orchim. He came in a situation where he wasn't there, and he said, he had asked Ishmael's wife for food or to feed the animals, and the first one refused. He said, your house is not in order. You're not doing what I'm giving you the message. When I gave you the message. Later on, a few years later, he came back and it was corrected. He said, your house is in order. And that's what happens when Avram dies. That message that he got so strong, that was corrected on him, he now solidified into his life. He gave Yitzchak his place, however it meant to be. But his tshuva is on a personal level, and this wasn't able to transmit it to his children. And that's what Hashem was saying earlier by Sodom. Hopefully I answered all the questions. If anybody wants to discuss this further, they can reach out to me, PM me, and we can discuss further. Have a great week and a wonderful Shabbos.